Firstly, I would like to apologize for this speech, but I'm using a backup that was prepared at the last minute. Unfortunately, due to budget cuts and the general infeasibility of my first idea, I've been forced to make do with a lesser substitute. You see, in my original plan, the chapel wouldn't be here right now. Poof, it would have vanished without a trace. In my ideal, it would be spring term, so there would be smooth grass set up with folding chairs and a podium. Some enterprising faculty members would take charge and funnel everyone to their seats in the first open-air chapel, and I would deliver substantially the same speech. You can imagine my displeasure when I was told that there's no budget for such a dramatic stunt, and Mr. Cohen is still too busy at law school, so I guess that we'll just have to get by with our imagination. But why make the chapel disappear? I didn't just want to get out of making this talk. For some reason, I feel a compulsion to take advantage of times when I have a large captive audience. I still can't figure out whether that's because I'm a narcissist or a masochist, but I'm up here sweating under my own free will. Instead, I would want to point out how strange it is to be having chapel without the chapel. The content, a reading, a hymn, a talk, reports, could all be normal, but without the right building, we'd be lost. When we meet in the morning in Mem Hall, the service can't really be called chapel, which is why we call it Mem Hall Chapel. Chapel's just not the same thing without the building. The service is irrevocably tied to the place. When I'm bored at night and can't get to sleep, I often find myself contemplating how people would react if huge tracts of their life were changed. How different would I be if I were born in Europe? What if people could photosynthesize like plants? What if I had never read my favorite book, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy? For a project of the imagination, it's a very scientific process. It involves breaking something complicated down into lots of little variables before changing one of them and seeing how they all fit together again. It's using the scientific method to pull things apart and figure out how they work, and it's a great way to pass the time. So let's try one as a group. What if we took every single person from St. Paul's and switched places with someone from Andover? I don't think that you can deny that it would alter both of the schools. Besides, what would you call the two? Would we stick with the old identities for the two campuses, therefore saving us the considerable costs of repainting all of the signs to be of our respective school colors? Or does the identity of the school come from the people who work there? What gives this particular patch of ground such a separate identity from the other? We're both boarding schools, and we trade administrative practices back and forth. So why would switching campuses make so much of a difference? Perhaps that's a little bit too much to wrap our heads around this early in the morning, so let's try something a bit more concrete. I can say with absolute conviction that St. Paul's could not exist in any other climate besides the woods of New Hampshire. These acres are the only place of which I know which can at one moment lend themselves to depression and introspection, and at the next moment create an almost euphoric awe at the natural world. I can't imagine St. Paul's on a Brazilian beach or on an island in the Philippines. Perhaps it's the freezing weather that contributes to our education. Some might say that it builds character. Would St. Paul's continue to exist without its $400 million endowment? Note Mr. Hirschfeld's minor heart attack at the very thought. No endowment would mean no upkeep for the buildings, raised tuition, and no financial aid, only to name a few effects. That is, of course, if we were even to remain open as a school at all. We can't seem to stomach minor budget cuts resulting in the removal of our second lunch option. So how could we deal with significant changes to the way the school operates? It seems kind of silly to have our very existence depend on only one aspect of our makeup. Because how could money help to teach those things, the knowledge of which continues in heaven? Money doesn't go to heaven, and neither do buildings or wide swatches of land. And yet all of these things contribute to this education, which we are currently enrolled in. It's kind of scary to think about the changes that are being made today as we speak. If we improve the food at the upper, are we going to lose something distinctly St. Paul's? When the schedule is changed next year, will our SAT scores drop as a result? St. Paul's could not exist without any single part of its existence, like a game of Jenga after a couple of turns. To remove any bit is to invite disaster. At other places, one might feel like they're being watched or followed, but at St. Paul's, I'm paranoid about being molded by an unseen entity. Morality lessons arrive out of thin air, and often in perfect conjunction with speakers or classes of the same topic. Perhaps St. Paul himself guides us in our individual transformations. He would know how to transform the self, as he was once Saul of Tarsus. And I don't think that I'm alone in this feeling of shaping. As Ellie Duke quoted a friend in her chapel speech, "Every day I feel like I'm becoming someone." Should any other place experience this type of group delusion, it would seem weird and the CIA or aliens would probably be blamed. But at St. Paul's, it seems par for the course. But what is St. Paul's? Whenever I try to simplify this institution, I end up with two entirely correct and yet contradictory ideas. I feel the first most strongly when someone from the alumni or admissions office is talking. We are a school drenched in history and significance. This is an institution which has, since 1856, been attended by people who have gone on to become politicians, activists, and children's book writers. Our endowment is large enough to buy 70 M1 Abrams tanks and still have enough left over for a light lunch of 287 kilograms of caviar. We churn out the leaders of tomorrow in bulk batches and ship them off to prestigious colleges for training and finishing. We are gods among mortals, the very best that mankind has to offer. Then, at the same time, we're people. We sleep at night the same as everybody else. We complain about the weather. We ingest food and expend calories. We complain about massive amounts of work and in the same breath ask if anybody else wants to watch a movie tonight. We feel insecure about ourselves, our grades, our appearance, the way we treat others. We are utterly human. I've noticed a pattern in the speakers that visit here. One group comes to us and tells us that we're the most amazing school in the world, filled with lots of little Einsteins and Beethovens, while the other group comes in and tries to remind us of our humility. I think that we need to hear both. We need to know that we should aspire to becoming CEOs and politicians, but we also need to hear stories of failure, of regrets and disappointments that can't be fixed. The necessary contradiction itself is just one more thing that St. Paul is trying to teach you. One more hypothetical for you. Could St. Paul's exist in a field? No new science center, no old buildings or traditions, no classrooms filled with smart boards and who knows what else. Each faculty member would have their own plot of turf with the bare minimum of what they would need to teach a subject. And each student would live in a group of tents holding the basic amenities of life. If you're like me, then you could see that this would never work, but why? Some might say that our sense of community would prevail against the harsh outdoor life, but after a week of using leaves as toilet paper, I don't think that community would hold up very well. Now, don't confuse my point. I'm not saying that we should all go on a school-wide camping trip, as hilarious as that might be to watch. I'm pointing out that, like it or not, we are a place defined by our possessions. I've been accused of many things, but modesty isn't one of them. In the 6th grade, when I was trying to introduce myself to a teacher, I decided that it was a good idea to begin with, "Hi, I'm Taylor, and I'm basically the smartest kid at this school." I'm surprised that she would teach me after that. I, of course, don't feel that way anymore. To think that you're the best kid at St. Paul's is to display a mind-staggering amount of stupidity. I don't care who you are. There's always someone smarter than you, or someone who gets better grades than you, or someone who gets the same grades as you while bagging half of their classes. And just when you start to think that you're the best at something, some third former comes in who shows such more potential than you ever did. And even with this almost constant beating of mediocrity, I'm still no poster child for modesty. Somehow I manage to hold on to some sense that I'm better than everyone else, no matter how substantial the evidence is to the contrary. That being said, I think I finally understand why modesty is important. People who endorse it are not proponents of acting like your possessions and skills don't matter. Saying something like, "I really shouldn't have gotten an HH on that test, I didn't study at all," is not being modest. It's just being a jerk to the person sitting next to you who got an HP. At this school, one of the lessons that seems to come up a lot is humility. But what does that even mean? It's not modesty. Modesty is part of how you speak, but I've always felt like humility was something more than just statements, something that you couldn't fake with a few choice words. So then what is humility? Humility is knowing that no matter how good you are, you will never be more than human, and everything else is just a gift. You will still be scared and tired and angry and bored, and there's nothing you can do about that. The only thing that we can try is to really understand that what we've been given is amazing. You should be humbled by the things and opportunities that have been given to you. True humility lies in understanding the exceptionality of what you have and acting accordingly. Let's understand this place. Let's dissect it until its innermost secrets are as easy to see as the spire of the power plant. But further than that, let's dissect ourselves. After all, you may wake up tomorrow and realize that my funding has finally come through and the chapel has disappeared. Thank you.